because it's dying. The whole system is dying. These backgrounds are too complicated. Let's put my background there.
Hello and welcome to the show. It is wonderful to see you. Of course, we will have Lembit Opik with us any second shortly. It is very, very straightforward. We have an amazing show for you tonight, and for all you people out there. If you don't know or haven't seen the show before, pop across to WarrenThornton.com. The first hour is free. After that, of course, it is a subscriber show. Sometimes that can be quite a long show. There is also, it is your own personal chat subscriber show in the morning. And there is also, of course, much, much more with daily bites and other recorded interviews that we have, like on Lembit Opik's show, which is Unprecedented TV. It is only £3 a month. By all means, come across and come and see us. I am joined by the wonderful Lembit Opik, who's looking sartorially elegant, as per usual. Good evening, Lembit. How are you?
I'll do my tie-up then. I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm very well, thank you. Slightly different background because I'm on my travels today. I've been at an event, Reform UK event, and it was very good. And there was great optimism there.
And are they going to take you as an MP?
A lot of people ask me if I will stand, and I'm inclined to not stand because I think I can do more good by helping lots of good people be elected. But it's a possibility. It's not really why I'm doing it, though. As we may discuss today, the United Kingdom is in such a mess. It's all hands on deck to try to save us.
It is. And of course, each person will be doing everything that they can in their own way. Well, we're going to start in Australia because we have an insider who's given us a bit of a heads up here. And we're going to talk about this because literally, shall we say, the immigration problem that was supposedly there, basically, as usual, two sets of supporters turned up, and the police turned up as well and guided both sets of supporters together. It became an absolute crap show in the fact that they just started knocking 10 lumps out of each other, and the police lost all control. But then again, from what we understand from our insider, who said that they deliberately guided them there and then deliberately went off in another direction. She is saying that this, of course, is a disgrace, that it was done on purpose. And, of course, the whole idea was to totally make everybody, shall we say, to the point where they were going to start knocking lumps out of each other and everything else so that the police can get stronger powers. Now, that may be the case. Let's have a little look. It was a massive turnout, I have to say. And of course, there we are. That was just one of the cities where they had this turnout. And of course, they were there chiefly about immigration and wanting to take their own country back. Sean Murphy, very quickly, and then we'll go to Lembit for his ideas, because what we're hearing from our source is that the police deliberately guided the two sets together and then stood back and let the carnage happen. Sean Murphy.
This is why all this unrest, it's not just happening by pure chance. And I'm not just talking about Australia, I'm talking about everywhere.
Yes.
The deep state are losing, and now this is their last bit attempt to get everybody fighting each other. And it's done on purpose. It's not just Australia, as you say, Indonesia, as you mentioned earlier, Warren, and many other places. It's being done on purpose to give the police more stringent powers because they want to, the deep state want to be able to control the populations.
Yeah, and of course that you could be well right there. We have to ask you about this, Lembit. It is one of those things, isn't it, where you look at it and you think this is only going to get worse, isn't it? Are we being lined up for greater powers?
I think so. I didn't think so. I didn't want to think so, but I do think so now, and here's why. They seem to keep wanting to give us digital ID. on and on about the benefits of digital ID, which I don't have any interest in, whatever. In fact, I'm very much against it. I'll explain why in a minute. But to do that, they have to justify it through civil unrest. And I think that there is a collective plan to try to achieve that. That they say, look, there's so much unrest, we have to intervene. The digital ID is a classic example of it, but what they really want digital ID for is not to control the migrants, it's to control all of us. And so it seems to me that in the dying embers of the current empires around the world in the West, they're just desperate to try and take control. Now, I wouldn't have said that 3 years ago, Warren, but it's happening so often. And a friend of mine was put into an incredibly bad position by the police recently at one of the demonstrations against illegal migrants. And basically, the concerns that illegal migrants come here and then they rape our children. And the police were completely biased. It was shocking. So now I'm beginning to think that there is an agenda. What do you think?
I think there definitely is, because they would like to shut you up. And the only way to shut you up, and let's face it, there's only one way to shut you up, and that is literally to get further powers to stop you from talking. Now, I hear what people are saying where they turn around and go, oh, we can't have lawlessness. But nobody is listening. And if nobody is listening, then we have a major problem, don't we? Or at least I think we have a major problem. And the problem, of course, as I say, when these people are going out and protesting, they have an absolute right to. And I think once their voice is not heard, or when it gets nowhere, this is a setup, because it's the easiest thing in the world, Lembit, for me. If people go out to protest, absolutely fine, okay? Don't have a problem with that at all. Peaceful. If there is to be a counter-protest, it works on a different day. Yeah, very, very simply, you do not let this sort of thing happen. Let's have a look.
It was a day Melbourne would rather forget. Violence and hatred, a city divided.
I'm bloody 80 in a couple of weeks, and I've come here today to show my support for Australia. We're trying to do a march once. They're here every single weekend.
And something no one wants to see, the burning of the Australian flag.
Death to our fragility!
The thin blue line eventually arrived. The two groups separated, police constantly rushing to plug the gaps. Media crews, yes, but also plenty of people filming the protest themselves.
So we had plenty of Antifa nonsense going on. Lembit's disappeared for a second. We had plenty of this Antifa nonsense going on. And of course, as you hear there, they turn around and say they eventually arrived. And of course, they let them go at it for a good hour, in which many people got hurt, many people got injured. And of course, shall we say, many people left with bleeding noses and everything else. That is not what you do. I think Lembit is almost back with us. That is not what you do. Lembit's back with us now. Very simply, when you get stuff like that happening, and it is quite disgraceful, there is no question in my mind, Lembit, that when you allow people to clash like that, you are doing it for a darker reason.
Yeah. Sorry, there seems to be some slight outage on the internet. I don't know where. Let's just see how this goes.
Yeah.
The darker reason is to control us. And once again, I'm very, very much more persuaded this is happening because of the experiences at a place called the Bell Hotel in Epping in London, where the police essentially marched counter-protesters into the area with masks on, while at the same time trying to prosecute the original protesters who didn't want to have rapists taking photographs of their children through school railings. And they were arresting them for wearing masks. And then more recently, the same thing happened again somewhere else. And there's this video of the police saying something about the fascists. When my friend said, you called us fascists, he said, no, I said flashes, which is clearly a lie. So it does mean that there's a collusion. But I think that's because things are going wrong for the state. I think the West is really falling to pieces. And these are the dying embers of these hegemonies, these empires.
It's quite strange how they're allowing this sort of thing to go on. And of course, there are paid groups of agitators as well. There's no doubt that that's taking place, Lembit. And of course, we see all these people sort of turning around and going, "Oh, it's not. We're not this. We're not that." But it ends up that they are paid actors, and we end up with situations like the Desi Freeman situation.
Yeah, all of this is part of the same pattern. If you think about it as a 20-piece jigsaw puzzle, it really illustrates a jigsaw puzzle which looks like the face of Big Brother from George Orwell's 1984.
Yes.
What I've noticed, Warren, is the people who are persecuting us in terms of our freedom of expression, they don't actually understand the value of freedom because they're not intelligent enough to value freedom. They're frightened of alternative views, and therefore they try to shut them down. Now, on top of that, you've got an additional problem in the specific case of the United States, and maybe to an extent in Australia. The politicians, the political classes diminished in capability and stature to the point where they're insecure. And so now, instead of trying to reason with people and trusting people to be independent of thought, they're frightened of people being independent of thought. And that's why this is happening.
Yeah, exactly that. Let's have a look. In case you don't know or are not aware, we've covered this a bit, but let's have a quick natter about Desi Freeman. Let's get this up for you.
Freeman, the fugitive accused of shooting dead 2 police officers in the Victorian High Country last week, along with the words "free man."
Now, he's become something of a cult hero, of course, in Australia. Very divisive. Some people are saying he's fantastic. Other people are saying he's absolutely terrible, and he shouldn't. He should face everything, the worst possible outcomes. People asking for him. So we have to ask: is he a hero or villain? So let's fill you in on Desi Freeman. He's the man who killed 2 police officers and injured 1, and has become a massively divisive figure in Australia. Freeman is a self-described sovereign citizen who's been a vocal critic in the past of the police. According to the Australian Federal Police, a sovereign citizen, also known as a SOVCIT, seeks to disassociate from society and refuses to engage with societal requirements like paying tax. It is an uncentralised belief system, but is generally characterised by an anti-authority idea that they are not under the jurisdiction of the government and the law does not apply to them. It's why for many years it was typically associated with videos of someone getting pulled over for a traffic stop, refusing to provide their details to the police and claiming law enforcement has no authority over them. Still got arrested. Freeman was earlier referred to police as frigging Nazis, Gestapo and terrorist thugs. Not too wrong there. He tried to take a police officer in the County Court of Victoria to the Supreme Court of Victoria in November 2024 to fight driving offences. He'd been fined and banned from driving for 2 years for speeding, refusing to apply a drug test and driving off filming the police on his mobile phone. He went to the county court in an attempt to get those charges thrown out, arguing that he was acting in self-defence under extreme duress and felt threats of harm. I felt threatened and preyed upon, even the sight of a police car nowadays after all the COVID stuff that went on, and we went through terrible lockdowns, has left me and my family shattered. Now the police have turned up with the child sexual abuse and the social services to try and arrest not only Freeman but take away his children. Now he does not have a history. I'm going to say this straight out there. He does not have a history of any sexual violence whatsoever towards the children. Now, when they went onto his property and tried to arrest him, he ended up gunning down 2 police officers that are now dead and 1 who is not. Now, he then took off into the bush where he's been at large for 6 days. Now, police have admitted Freeman, who lives on the semi-rural property in Perthkunka, where the shooting took place, knows the area better than us. Victoria's Police Chief Commissioner, Mike Bush, said Freeman had a superior knowledge of the local area, but emphasised expert police resources were pouring in to help try and find him. It's been reported that Freeman had lived on the 20-hectare property for years. Now, Freeman's wife and children arrived at a police station yesterday evening, with police saying there is no indication they were with a suspected gunman, but at the time they said that Freeman's wife and children were being kidnapped by him. There is nothing, the Victoria Police have now said in a new release, to suggest they were ever in the company of the suspect. Freeman, as they say, was initially believed to be on the run, holding his wife and children hostage, but he fled into the bush alone. Bush said there appeared to be no non-family members at Freeman's property when the police attended. Now, authorities, he's a crazed gunman who killed others that had gone to arrest him. To others, he's seen as a hero and modern-day Crocodile Dundee, who railed against the brutal Australian lockdowns during COVID and was terrorised by the police and the authorities ever since. The narrative is, as you would expect from Australian media, while others say he was a man who was pushed too far. So after 6 days, Desi is still at large, and many in the area have expressed a willingness to offer him shelter and food. People are saying that the authorities victimised Desi by punishing him in this way. As far as reports are available, he has no prior sexual history of harming children whatsoever, and they are seeing it as something they are doing to try and get this guy to toe the line. Many are saying authorities and the way he behaved towards the public, the police should have seen this coming. Others just see him as a nut job. Your thoughts, Lembit?
There's a lot in what you've said. I can keep it simple. I don't know him, obviously. I've never met him. This hasn't gone to court. And therefore, it's hard to know about the man himself. What I'm about to say is nothing more than my opinion. But it does share a very serious observation about where we are as a society. My opinion is that by trying to have a sexual offence charge, they are playing the classic card, which happens in the United Kingdom all the time. And it's a rather barefaced example of that. Just try to besmirch someone because they're a problem. And presumably try to put the public off because the public doesn't really like child sexual abuse and child abuse generally. Now, here's my opinion. What we're really seeing here is the breakdown that I was talking about before. The separation of the state, which only rules by consent, and the public, which doesn't consent. And so the reason he's a hero, regardless of what he has done, is because he illustrates a fight back, which we're beginning to see across the whole of the Western world, or a lot of it. That fight back looks like the public saying, we've had enough of this. We're simply not putting up with it anymore. And that's not about whether he killed a policeman, whether he's on the run, whether he should be arrested. It's because the public just don't accept what's being fed to them anymore. You can see this in the United Kingdom also, especially in regard to the migrants' hotels. Last point, Warren. In the UK, and we might talk about this separately, so I won't dwell on it. In the UK, all the government has left to try to contain the problem around migrant hotels is using lawfare, trying to get decisions overturned. But the public's not having it. And I think, and I'm surprised, but I think that's what's happening in Australia. So this man, regardless of what he's done or what he hasn't done, is becoming iconic to the fight back.
Yes. Yes, he's becoming very much a sort of Ned Kelly sort of hero, really. So let's talk about the UK arm of this then. Because, I mean, there are memes going around now, not about that woman, to apologise, that's the wrong one that's come up there. Very, very simply...
you put that up to provoke us.
I did. I'll provoke you with that a bit later. But there's even memes up there now saying 5 go, paint a roundabout. It is. British people have just had enough, haven't they?
Yes, they have. They've absolutely had enough. For those who aren't familiar with the issue which Warren's just shown there in that amusing cartoon, the 5 Go series is about a famous 5 archetypal British kids doing good, clean, fun things. And what seems to be happening is the British lion is beginning to roar. In 1940s, that roar was given by Churchill. In the 2020s, that roar has been given by the public, because we do not have politicians of the stature of Churchill or anything like it. The flashpoint has been a feeling that the current Labour government, worse than ever, any government ever before, is selling out Britishness and British culture and putting illegal immigrants above British citizens' interests. And the flashpoint for the flags came in an absolutely horrendous example of racism. Some school children, young school children, were asked to go and make talks about ethnicity. A British girl was dressed by her parents in the British Union Jack clothes. And when she went to school, they made her, they stopped her, they cancelled her, which she was obviously massively upset about, because somehow the school thought this was inappropriate. That led to a national result across the whole country where British flags and the St. George flags, that's the St. George Cross, have appeared everywhere. In my travels today, I've seen hundreds of them because the fight back is beginning. In a sense, what we're seeing here, Warren, is that pushing beyond breaking point of the general public. And we're saying now, no, we're not accepting it. The battle for Epping is really the battle for Britain. And as a result of this, we are seeing the public in their millions overwhelming the feeble authority of undereducated, incompetent politicians who can no longer expect to command the respect of the public whom they serve.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. The problem that we have, isn't we, and let's not beat around the bush here, we're talking about the dangers that people perceive, quite rightly, and they're out there, in context about illegal migrants and children, which of course is the most vulnerable thing of all. And of course, we've got on one side the academics, and there is this row between the two sides. Between the academics and turning around and saying, never confuse education with intelligence. You can have a master's degree and still be an idiot. It is pretty, that's pretty much it. The common sense over the, how can I put it, what people would call just nonsense, where they turn around and go, there's nothing wrong with these people. This is that and the other. They should be allowed to come to the country and everything else. Clearly doesn't wash anymore, does it, Lemmy?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't wash. People don't believe them. Where's David Lammy? I put a tweet out just before we came on air, or X or whatever I meant to call them. And I said, what results has David Lammy achieved since becoming Foreign Secretary, anyone? That's going up by 1,000 views every 10 minutes. And 133 people have responded. One of the more amusing ones, I'll read them a bit later maybe, but one of the more amusing ones is, I'll find it in a minute, is basically that he has proved the meaning and the value of a chocolate teapot. and this is the point, people just don't respect them anymore. It's just comedic. And these people, they're so poor that people just don't have respect. Here we are. Robert McIver said he has eliminated any doubt about the usefulness of a chocolate teapot. Well done, Robert. It's very good. And the reality now is that we've got politicians who are completely incompetent. And what's happening, I've predicted this week after week, vigilantism is taking over because parents are saying, we're not going to have rapists living next door to our children. And so there's a real likelihood now, I think it's a likelihood, that the public is going to start taking the law into its own hands. That's fraught with danger. Vigilantism carries with it great risks, but it's essentially a situation where the police are out of control. And nobody's listening to the ministers anymore. Now, we've got ministers now who are getting into incredibly hot water for buying extremely expensive houses. We've got mystery around Keir Starmer and that court case. They're being judged for everything apart from what they're supposed to be judged by. And also, all that time, they're all chasing after Nigel Farage, who's capitalising, making hay while the sun shines, because he actually looks like a grown-up.
Yeah, I think you're probably spot on there. We do have a problem. There's no question that we have a problem because To give it a context, so there was a tweet put out saying the amount of little girls, white girls, drugged, tortured and raped by Pakistani Muslims, local councillors and police officers would fill the O2 arena. The amount of paedophile Pakistanis arrested, charged and imprisoned in the UK would not fill a National Express coach.
Well, the shocking reality is that it looks as if Labour kept quiet because it was difficult for them, because they wanted the block votes that come with those communities. And the police seem to have colluded to, in the most horrendous way, arguably. They've even participated. I'm not quite sure on the details, so I don't want to say more than I know. But everyone seemed to know this was going on and no one listened to the kids. Why? Because those communities tend to be in Labour areas and Labour just didn't want the fight. And when you start looking at the amount of paedophilia in the political classes, it's extremely disturbing, including in my old party, the Liberal Democrats. Very, very worrying. And Labour, when you start looking at the number of convicted paedophiles in the Labour Party, it's shocking. So what I'm seeing here is the complete giving up of responsibility by the parties, abdication of responsibility, I think is the phrase, where they just let it happen. And the only reason we're even talking about it is because some brave people in politics did start raising it, and some very brave victims did start talking about it. But where's the inquiry? I don't for a moment think the Labour Party is going to want that, because just imagine if I'm right. Just imagine if large numbers of Labour members of Parliament or councillors or other operatives were actually part of this. It's a death sentence to their next general election results.
I think you're absolutely right. Mark Breckle? Or is it Mark Onza?
Yeah, Mark Onza, Warren. Yeah, I think Lembit's absolutely bang on with what he's saying with regards to possible vigilante movement. But hopefully there's more organised things. I don't know if you've heard of Shield. I think they're a bunch of ex-bikers who put something together in local communities. You know, so you've got to distinguish between people going out and being a vigilante and an organised group of people who want to make good on the streets. And as Lembit says, the focus is on protecting children, women and children. That has got to be number one priority. And I've just got to say, while I'm on, Warren, isn't it a big shame when it takes someone like Ryan Clark to wake normal people up as to what's happening in the world? I take my hands off to him. For a normal presenter, I've got to say, Ryan Clark, fair play to you. No against you, and I agree with everything he said.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. It's a good call. Lee Williams.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if anybody knew this, but there was someone spotted at Epping inside one of these hotels with a machine gun. I mean, I kind of knew it a couple of years ago anyway, through a lady that was going to rent out a hotel in Bristol years ago. So has anybody known that? Because it was actually the best, you know, the one the stirrer, I'll call him, Tommy Robinson, that pointed it out.
Yeah, I've not seen that, and I've not heard from anybody else until they produce that. Then we'll just take it with a pinch of salt. While we're talking about the safety of children, then, Lembit, we need to talk about this, because this is important. And I've tweeted out on this at the weekend, saying that we have this Minnesota shooter was tired of being trans. And I've always said that I think these people believe that they failed, because there's a big difference between transsexuals and transgenders. Transsexuals are very, very passive, very, very just want to get on with their lives. They're not interested in rocking boats or pronouns or anything else. They just want to carry on dealing with their illness the way that they see fit. Yet transgenders, or this trans agenda, these people that are full of rage, who go out, attack people like Kelly J. Keane, go after people like J.K. Rowling on Twitter. And of course, they destroy the lives of many, many people. I mean, this is the actress Ellen Page. Look at the difference, Lembit. You know, there's a girl who was obviously hoodwinked into. She didn't feel she was that attractive as a girl, and this, that, and the other. And she basically got talked into it by a bunch of people in her support group and everything else. And that is the state of her now. You know, after having her breast cut off. But they're doing this to children, Lembit. And this, in some ways, I mean, when we look at this is something that I feel very, very strongly about, because I've known someone who literally, the daughter has gone through this, and this can't be right, can it?
It's not right. The state education system is betraying our children in the United Kingdom now, and has been in America. Something Donald Trump has said, something Nigel Farage says, the leader of Reform UK. And it's sponsored by an appalling cabal of deranged politicians who think this is really important and really good. 98.5% of the human race knows that it's straight and lives a normal life and maybe has children and gets on with it. They don't have to be told to question their identity. The 1.5% may be confused, and that's fine for them to get whatever counselling they need, but promoting it, that's what's happening, promoting it. A month of gay pride in London is completely out of proportion. I have said many times, sex and sexuality is an important element of life, but it's not key to life itself. And it's the perversion of priorities which is causing me a problem. I work with somebody who's had a sex change, and I've never known her as a man. She doesn't go on about it. I know it because she incidentally told me once. And I used to also be involved with the UK Transsexual Awards. I was a judge. They didn't want to be political. They just wanted to be women. The problem is there's these angry, angry people who seem to think by changing their gender, they change their problems. A lot of the time they don't. And so basically they expect us all to say, oh, you're really brave for having sex change. I'm not interested in your sexuality. I'm interested in what work you've done, what collaboration we're doing, and so on. And yet, I think, you used the word illness. I think that this is an area we're not even allowed to debate properly. Yeah. Because as soon as you start talking about it, the inference is that you are in some terrible way a bigot. And that's simply not true.
But this is, and I'm going to say this straight out loud, it was Hitler himself who, Elon Musk has turned around and said in this post here, now it was Hitler himself who said we don't need the people. If we have their children, the rest will die out. Once we put this ideology into the children, then this will carry on. And Elon Musk said, in order to survive, an ideology that fails to reproduce itself must necessarily infect the minds of the children of those who do reproduce. That's why they push so hard to control education. It's a vampire cult. Does he have a point?
Oh, he's absolutely right. I think that's a tremendously eloquent and insightful observation. By definition, under normal circumstances, the critical mass of people who don't reproduce will reduce. It'll reduce because people aren't inheriting the genes or whatever, I suppose. Now, there's I'm making a few assumptions here, but by and large, it makes sense because genetically, if you're having same-sex relationships, you can't make children, and that's understandable. I wouldn't persecute people in that situation. I do have quite a few friends who consider themselves gay. I don't talk about it all the time because it's not really interesting to me. I'm not interested in their thoughts. But here's the thing. The very sinister part in all of this is this obsessive attempt to try to encourage the nurturing of children and the having of children by same-sex couples. Because that's what Elon Musk is saying. Yes. It doesn't naturally propagate. It naturally dies out or stays at a very low level for whatever reason, which we're not really 100% sure about. But they're trying to build it up. It's insane that 1 in 8 Labour Party politicians in the United Kingdom isn't straight.
Yes.
And it's not because they should all be straight, but it's completely disproportionate to the general population. And if the British political system is meant to represent the general population, the question has to be asked, why, if it's 1.5% in the population, is it 12.5% in the Labour parliamentary seats? And I'm sure it's pretty high in the Liberal Democrat group too.
Yeah, exactly that. Let's have a little look at this then, Lambert.
Participated in medicalizing young people for almost 5 years. And what I saw was that we were harming these kids. They were not getting better. Often their mental health was getting worse. We were tearing apart families. And we also have to recognize that gender ideology tears apart other facets of our society. It tears at sports and families and safety for women and safety for families and kids. And so the ideology as a whole, to me, just became something that I felt like I was participating in harming the exact same patients that my job was supposed to be to protect, to make them better.
So what I'm going to say a couple of things here, Lambert, and you might think I'm being a little hard. First of all, well done for being a whistleblower and coming out and saying that. But I'm going to have a bit of a go here. It took you 5 years to realise that. Lambert, these people who worked in this industry, I mean, we've got the Tavistock clinic, which was closed down, and we've got thousands and thousands of parents now that are putting legal proceedings against the Tavistock clinic for basically pushing very aggressively this agenda on their children.
Yes, Tavistock Institute was disgusting disgrace. A friend of mine, Amy, was involved in that, and they were trying to get her to say things like she was institutionally racist, and just because she was white, and this kind of nonsense. But they also quite clearly were pushing trans ideology and gender ideology on vulnerable people. If you're in your teens and you're in that confusing state of hormonal development, reaching puberty perhaps and beginning to explore your sexuality, you're tremendously vulnerable. And if an adult who seems to be caring starts putting these ideas in your head, and you see it all around, and you see the gay pride, you see all these horrendous posters in the underground endlessly telling you how important it is to celebrate homosexuality and transgenders and so on, then you're not going to wonder what's right. I met somebody today who studied environmental science, and he was surprised when I said there was no climate crisis. And I went through some basics, and they hadn't told him the basic science. He'd been lied to in his qualification. Now, I think the same thing's happening with gender identity. And so what I want to do is go back to traditional values. I didn't really want to get involved in politics, Warren, but I've been dragged more and more into it, really through Reform UK. But there are other parties who are making pretty interesting noises too, all on the outside at the minute. But they're saying, enough. Leave the kids alone, to quote Pink Floyd. And oi, teacher, hey, teacher, leave those kids alone. And that's what we need to do. And it's back to that fight back. Parents have had enough. And frankly, if I find that in my school, my children's school, they start talking about gender ideology to children in classes of 4 years old and 7 years old, I'm going to throw the book at them. I don't think it will happen in the schools I've chosen, because that's why I chose them. But the state system is infected by that dark malaise that erudite quote from Elon Musk quite rightly highlighted, Warren.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there. Let's get into this, because Russia are being blamed for something that they shouldn't be being blamed for. Isn't that weird? Very simply, we're going to look into something that has happened in Ukraine, and of course, it is something that we know quite a lot about, because we, of course, did a whole series of interviews, and I'm going to very quickly pop into the chat if you want to see it. By the way, I did an interview with Igor Lopatonok, who literally worked with Oliver Stone in Ukraine's on Fire and everything else, but did a wonderful thing called the Maidan, which was all about what happened in 2014 with the overthrow of the government at the time. And I'm going to pop that just in the chat. So if you want to watch that interview with Igor Lopatonok, by all means go along and help yourself. Now, while we were talking about the Maidan. So I'm going to just take you through some things that happened that you might not be aware that actually happened. So in 2014, Victoria Nuland and the National Endowment for Democracy, which is the NICE, or shall we say, the propaganda arm of the CIA, decided to overthrow the Ukrainian government. And by doing that, they arranged for the protests along with George Soros. They then turned violent. And then they had snipers go collect weapons from the US Embassy. And we are calling this, we always have called this, we're being utterly consistent. They went to the Hotel Ukraine and then they started shooting people so that suddenly there would be this mass uprising in the world and everybody would go, oh, this is terrible, and we must overthrow the corrupt government of Ukraine, which was nothing of the sort. Now, they were Georgia Legion people. Now, everybody has turned around and said, well, it's not true, and everything else. And we have maintained time after time that it is absolutely true. So have a little look at this. The Ukraine, the Music Conservatory and Zotanev Palace as such, this is from a whistleblower. During the Euromaidan mass protester at the end of 2014 with the task of provoking the Beirut anti-riot police to use force against the Maidan protesters and spill blood of the protesters. This guy was on Macedonian TV because he was a military sniper, gathered a group in the beginning of 2013, a year before the Maidan massacre, informed them that there would be a coup in Ukraine and that they travelled in March and September to the Independence Square Maidan in Kiev to survey best positions for snipers and identify the hotel. Well, the hotel itself was in the Hotel Ukraine, and of course people will always turn around and said, no, this didn't happen. But it did, because this is the gentleman that we're talking about who has now been assassinated. He was one of the people who was getting everything ready for the sniper teams. Now, these sniper teams were found to be from Georgia, or the Georgia Legion, and they were carrying guns from one place to another. And of course, being us, we managed to get some footage of this, and we'll just get that up for you. And very, very simply, they were being asked all the time what they were doing and where they were going and everything else. Here's the sniper teams carrying their bags full of goodies from one hotel into vans to go to the Hotel Ukraine.
Глушите, хлопці, що це таке у вас? Розкажіть.
Це у нас труби, музикальні інструменти.
Ну так, давай.
О, пацани, там привіт, Томаш.
Now, these people were carrying aid and supplies.
Все, что делать? Что такое?
So if you want to know how the war in Ukraine really started, go and watch that interview, because of course there are many, many people that have no idea what happened. So what has happened? Well, very, very simply, we've had an assassination, and the assassination is of that person that we saw very simply there, as we showed you. And of course, we're talking about all sorts of horrible, horrible things when it comes to this. Let's get into it and who this person is. Now, very simply, he was shot at fairly point-blank range. There is a picture of him having been assassinated. Now, many, many people are turning around and blaming the Russians for this, but the CIA, when people are close to losing a war and the CIA are involved, it very, very quickly can become a case of we need to shut people up because they can point the finger at us. And I have to say, this looks more and more likely. Now, this guy took part in this horrible thing. Now, he actively took part in that and many other things as well, not just the trade union. And of course, eventually, someone caught up with him. But he'd also made all sorts of threats to talk about everything that had gone on. And I think people were slightly afraid that he might blow the whistle. His name is Perubi, and this is what happened to him. You will see the man lurking there, and this is Perubi coming along there, and you will see the man pop out. Dressed as a delivery driver, he then executes him with a revolver and then runs away, jumps on his scooter and drives off. Now, whether this was Ukraine tidying up or the CIA tidying up, I guess we will never know. But there's no doubt whatsoever that this guy was 100% neo-Nazi and 100% involved in all these things. Now, his name is Andrei Perubi. He's of far-right origins and Banderite roots. He co-founded the Socialist National Party of Ukraine, an openly far-right neo-Nazi, including Waltz-hook symbols and recruitments of skinheads. He led its paramilitary youth wing, the Patriot of Ukraine, from 1998 to 2004, known for torchlight marches and violent activism. And of course, more and more of that, the SNPU was rooted in ideology reminiscent of National Socialism and openly promoted revolutionary ultranationalism, often blaming Russia for Ukraine's problems. After 2004, that was transformed into the Svoboda Party, attempting to moderate its image, but many of its ideological trappings and radical networks persisted. Perubi supported honouring World War II era nationalist leader Stepan Bandera, reaffirming his ideological alignment with Banderite nationalism. And in fact, they still have a Banderite, would you believe, a neo-Nazi who was a rabid neo-Nazi. They still have a national holiday for him. And during the 2013-14 Maidan uprising, Perubi acted as the so-called commandant of the Independence Square, organising and directing armed self-defence units that clashed with police-escalated violence and paved the way for the coup in Kiev. Now, as for the war in Donbass, the Secretary of the National Security and Defence Council in 2014, Perubi authorised the anti-terrorist operation, or ATO, against the Donbass. This operation unleashed war against many, many Russian-speaking populations, leading to mass shelling of cities, thousands of deaths and widespread destruction before the Russians even entered. Now, from 2016 to 2019, he was a speaker at the Verkhovna Rada, so he was part of the parliament. He pushed through anti-Russian laws, banned opposition voices, jailed opponents, glorified Nazi collaborators, and enforced censorship and repression. He was wanted by Russia for Donbass war crimes. In November 2023, Russia's Interior Ministry officially placed Perubi on its wanted list, accusing him of war crimes and based on in absentia charges by the Russian Investigative Committee. Lembit, this guy was not a nice guy. He was one of the architects of the overthrow of the original democratic government of Ukraine. And this guy finally has been executed. As usual, they're saying that the Russians did it. But this points to, shall we say, getting rid of people before they open their mouth and start talking.
If your theory is correct, am I to understand that the argument is he was going to explain the collusion between perhaps the CIA, the Russians, the Ukrainian authorities in killing this man? Now, this man was mean, but a little confused about it. So it sounds plausible. That's my view. But I'm going to cross-question you a little bit.
No problem.
First of all, why would the state kill him? I would have imagined if he was around now, the last thing Zelensky would do was get rid of him. Is that because there was a different agenda at the time?
It's highly possible that there was, but let me put it this way. This guy knew all about the money that was being funneled from the USAID through George Soros, through the National Endowment for Democracy and Victoria Nuland.
Okay, so basically he knew where the smoking guns were.
Yes.
Okay, secondly, why kill him if he was actually useful? Or had he outlived his usefulness?
He pretty much outlived his usefulness at that time.
Okay. Who do you think killed him?
I think the CIA killed him, or shall we say Soros had him killed, to hide the money that flowed between Soros and the US and USAID, the National Endowment for Democracy, and the overthrow. So let me put some flesh on the bones of that for you, Lembit, because the USAID that he helped, shall we say, facilitated, was Soros' secret cash cow. Now, if you take away the Mockingbird PR gloss about democracy, promotion, and civil society, USAID has been less about aid and more about regime engineering, with George Soros' open society empire acting as a velvet glove on Washington's iron hand. Now, in 1993, USAID signed an agreement with Soros Foundation management training program to handpick and train professionals from Bulgaria, Estonia, Poland, Romania, and Slovakia. These weren't random interns, they were seedlings of a future elite groomed to steer the countries into NATO's orbit. Fast forward to the late 1990s and early 2000s, a string of colour revolutions in Eastern Europe behind the Iron Curtain, NGOs greased by USAID dollars, scripting spontaneous uprisings look more like CIA theatre than grassroots democracy. By 2003-2004, Ukraine's Orange Revolution became the Sojgate project, of which Perubi was involved. Soros International Foundation locked arms with USAID, while Washington quietly poured $54 million in 2003 and $34 million in 2004 into democracy programs inside Ukraine. Translation: pay the activists, fund the NGOs, destabilize the target, wrap it all in orange scarves. Now, he's not just at this in Europe. Soros has been doing this. He did it in Guatemala between 2015 and 2018, spent 100 million fueling unrest in Latin America. In Albania, documents obtained in 2018 revealed the USAID funneled 9 million into the 2016 campaign run by Soros, the East-West Management Institute, defined to reform the judiciary. The scale of the slush also reaches to Joe Biden in 2024. The most Soros-friendly POTUS in living memory requested nearly 30 billion for USAID. That's not aid, that's a war chest, and much of it end up in the soft power artillery and Soros-linked projects worldwide, from Eastern Europe to the Balkans and Latin America. So it's a perfect public racket, provides taxpayers billions. Soros provides the NGO infrastructure, and together they engineer regime change. What it does is seed elites, the 1990s training program, the colour revolutions funding the uprising, hijack the courts and media like Albania and Ukraine, and destabilise societies like Guatemala and Latin America. All this with, shall we say, aid for the poor, as it's being called, but together it's a perfect money laundering scheme that this guy has paid for his life with.
Yes, well, that last phrase seems really important. Greed seems to be central to this. I'll be brief because I know that Sean wants to come in.
Yep.
The amount of money being stolen stinks, and Zelensky's pathetic attempt at trying to take control of the anti-corruption authorities, which he might be able to do in a different way anyway, it rather is a different smoking gun. But what we're seeing here, everybody knows Ukraine is corrupt. It's so corrupt that a lot of the time the regime change would be an attempt to get rid of Zelensky, actually. But unfortunately, he was used to get rid of somebody else. So I would summarize my view in 30 seconds. It's this. The whole thing stinks. There are disgusting amounts of our money from the West being given to crooks. They have no hesitation in killing people, and there's still a very strange death potentially associated with the problems facing the British Prime Minister that I still want to know the answers to. But we won't really discover much about that because they're trying to they're trying to, in my view, delay investigation into the 3 Ukrainian rent boys. And so maybe we'll forget about it. The last thing I'd say is that in this whole situation, people are dying because very high stakes game.
Yeah, absolutely. Sean Murphy.
Well, I think this is going to be just the first of many of these types of assassinations of these leading figures that are associated with George Soros. I think it's quite possible that Soros, now on the US sort of wanted list, and will be hopefully imminently arrested, or him and his son. This is the sort of things that they would do because they do not want any more evidence. There's so much evidence against them already, but they do not want any more evidence made light. They don't want any more whistleblowers coming out or people talking. So it's the sort of thing that they would do.
Well, I don't know. I don't know about corruption. I mean, we're hearing Zelensky's corrupt.
Investigator from Ukraine's National Anti-Corruption Bureau has defected to Europe with what she describes as thousands of pages of internal files, detailing systemic corruption at the highest levels of power in Kiev. The defector, identified as Alina K., has overseen a task force tracking offshore wealth transfers tied to President Volodymyr Zelensky and his closest confidants, Serhiy Sheffer, Timur Mindich, Svitlana Pishanska, and other longtime allies operated a complex web of shell companies. These entities were used to acquire over 100 luxury properties abroad on behalf of the president and his family. The total value of funds laundered through these offshore channels exceeds $1.2 billion. The files contain purchase contracts and bank transfers linking Zelensky's circle to assets across Europe. 26 properties in Spain, including seaside villas in Marbella and penthouses in Barcelona. 14 properties in UK, including a Chelsea riverside estate. 21 properties in France, mostly along the Kate Desert. The list also includes 8 properties in Italy and 34 apartments in UAE. For Ukraine's embattled president,
Now, let's just take into account that we've been saying that 4 months. Anybody who follows the show knows that we've highlighted this and showed all these areas. Now the Telegraph are bringing that along, and the Telegraph is MI6's mouthpiece. So you can see what's going on here. They're lining Zelensky up for a Zelensky replacement. Zelensky is their boy, because suddenly they have started to turn around and go, oh, there's a problem here. Well, there's always been a problem, and here's another problem for you. This is something that we've had a look at as well, and we're coming out with this now. Now, Ukraine's own anti-corruption bureau is investigating that, but they've also got to be looking at Flamingo's manufacturer, which of course is those rockets that we're talking about, those missiles that everybody was saying, the brand new ones. Well, you've got to look at them for inflated costs and phantom production. Now, the main beneficiary is none other than Zelensky's old buddy, Timur Mindich, the oligarch come entertainment king, who co-founded Kvartal 95 with Vladimir back in the comedy club days. So when you follow the money from these people, First Point went from nothing in 2022 to pulling in over 320 million in 2024, a third of Ukraine's drone budget. They claim to have churned out 2,000 FB1 drones. On paper, that's $110 million. In practice, the math doesn't end up. Now, in 2025, Firepoint is slated to pocket over $1 billion in government contracts, fed by Western taxpayers under the Defend Democracy slogan. So let's translate that. While Ukrainian boys and elderly men are marched into the trenches, the Zelensky-Mindich circle is cashing billion-dollar checks on the back of missiles still half in the prototype stage. Flamingo indeed, a bird that never learned to fly except straight into the offshore grounds of the president. And the West, silent. Washington, Berlin, keep writing blank checks, chanting accountability while bankrolling the most corrupt regime in Europe. The same NATO brass who scream about Russian corruption are now accessories to a $1 billion Ponzi scheme built on body bags. This is real startup nation, not Silicon Valley, but Oligarch Valley, where every Western Euro morphs into a Lambo in Warsaw or a villa in Marbella or another Swiss bank account. Now, meanwhile, Russia with no hype, no flamingos, no comedy clubs, grinds out hypersonics, drones, artilleries, tanks by tens of thousands. A war machine sort of built for endurance. That's why Moscow is winning wars and Kiev's winning photo ops. The flamingo scandal, isn't a bug in Ukraine's system. It is the system. It's a Potemkin defense industry, lubricated by corruption, covered by Western media cheerleaders and paid for by your taxes. The only real range this missile has from NATO's treasuries, Lembit, is straight into Zelensky's friends' pockets.
Well, this is the interesting thing that you're making. I don't know where he got the money, but he's a multi-millionaire. How can a comedian with his rather poor capabilities have got this rich? And how, because he's staying his enormous wealth with his low salary as president of Ukraine? It doesn't add up, like you say. And his performance as a politician certainly wouldn't justify extra payments. I think that it's very difficult for us to get the information because the West will do anything to protect their asset in Ukraine until he's no longer useful as well. But it is pretty disgraceful if what you're saying is correct, because British taxpayers' money, American money, has been spent, and European money has been spent to bankroll a future expensive lifestyle. He can't get to those places easily at the minute. But I bet you anything he'll have incredible security after he loses his job.
Yes, absolutely. We had somebody pop their hand up and put it back down again.
The £450 car that is usually a little bit more, and it's his wife that treats Zelensky to it because I think he's out of motors. Is that one?
I don't think he's out of motors since his wife is driving around in a Bugatti Veyron that she purchased for 7.2 million. Andy? Andy?
Yeah. I would just make sure that Zelensky never left the Ukraine, so he couldn't spend his money abroad and enjoy a new lifestyle.
Yes, one of those where he does need to answer for it, doesn't he? And just before, of course, we let the people go, because, of course, it is time for those people to leave us. We're going to have a little talk because I think it is very, very important. Remember we said, Lembit, when we called the figures, and we were on your show on Unprecedented TV, calling out the figures of the dead. Have a look at this. Now, just take a look, if you would, the amount of police and the amount of people that are there. Now, this is outside of Kiev. This is an unmarked mass cemetery for the bodies of fallen Ukraine soldiers, and the people are there to protest that they are just being dumped so they don't have to pay out the families, and they want these soldiers identified. 12 people ended up getting arrested by the Ukrainian SBU, or should I say, the Ukraine's version of Gestapo. So this is literally a site where they were burying 4,000 bodies that they hadn't bothered to identify them.
It does add weight to your argument that they're desperately trying to cover up the death rate and also the cost. 4,000 bodies at $250,000 each.
Yep,
that's a huge amount. That's ridiculous. So $250,000 times 4,000. What was like 1.5. I think this could be wrong, but £1.5 billion worth of dead people there in terms of the compensation. Was that, well, how much did they get? 500,000.
340,000 apiece. They should be getting.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so basically that's roughly 1.4 billion. 1.4 billion of dead people being buried in an unmarked grave. It's hard to believe that Zelensky can get away with this, even with all his powerful friends, because he's so disgraceful. And I saw the figure 2 million. I think you were sharing that on the social website.
Yes.
Why has the figure gone up before our friends go?
So very, very simply, it was at 1.8 million. And they said, of course, that 400,000 people had deserted. We turn around, our experts who are brilliant at this, turn around and say quite often the losing side will inflate the figures of the desertion to try and hide the number of the properly dead. So what they do is they double it or even treble it in some cases. And then, of course, Ukraine came out and said there are 202,000 people missing. They've only instigated procedures for recapture of 53,000 of them. So there could be even more that have died because, of course, the others are listed as AWOL. And, of course, they can do that as well. But what happened was the original figure of 400,000 turned out to be 202,000. So the rest of those people then are presumed dead. And therefore that takes it from 1.8 million to 2 million dead. However, as they've only instigated proceedings, 50,000 proceedings against people that have gone AWOL, and there's still 202,000 missing, that's another 150,000 they're not accounting for. So Ukraine's numbers never add up, but they do add up if you're burning bodies and you're burying them in unmarked graves and you're burying them out on the battlefield in mass graves. Then they do add up, Lemby.
Every 3,000 dead is a billion.
Yep.
300,000 dead is 100 billion. 2 million dead is 2/3 of a trillion.
Yes. That's why. They would have to pay out more than Ukraine's actual gross GDP in 4 years. Not that they have any GDP anymore, but their GDP beforehand. So just letting you know. Thank you so much for watching the people on Twitter, on X. You can find this on Unprecedented TV, obviously, tomorrow. Do come and give us a look as well. I normally talk to Lemby on Unprecedented TV on a Monday morning. For those of you who did enjoy the show, please come to warrenthornton.com where you can be part of the family and you can see the full version, the whole show, which we've got much more to show you. Take care and look after yourselves.